I start my mornings the same way I always have. Kettle on, spoon of sugar, a small shake of cinnamon over black coffee. The rain passed in the night, and the yard smells like wet leaves and honest dirt. It's quiet in my kitchen. For a long time, this quiet scared me. Now it's where I find my courage. If you're listening from anywhere in the world, tell me where you are in the comments. And if stories about dignity and second chances help you breathe a little easier, subscribe. I'm going to tell you something hard, but I'll tell it gently. My name is Ruth Henderson, and I'm 75 years old. I spent 52 of those years married to a man named Daniel. We raised 3 sons. We paid our bills. We held hands in church. People here in Maple Harbor, Maryland said we were steady as the courthouse clock. They didn't know about the secret life that grew right under my nose. Some wounds never close. They just teach you how to live without flinching. Mine taught me to look people in the eye and tell the truth, even if that truth changes the shape of my life. I didn't learn it all at once. I learned it the way you learn a recipe, by failing, by tasting the mistake on your tongue, by starting over. I learned that my husband had a key to a house that wasn't ours. I learned that my younger sister, Lila, had been opening that door for years. I learned that love can be loyal and wrong at the same time, and that silence can be the loudest kind of betrayal. But you aren't here for whispers. You're here for the moment. The whisper turned into a voice. You're here for the night. I stood on a stage in our town square on July 4th and said, "Enough." The night I held up folders of proof. The night I threw a handful of keys into the crowd like junk jewelry I was done wearing. You want to know how I got there? I'll start before the hurt. I'll take you back to when the world was smaller and any future felt possible. I'll show you the good years, because they were real. And then I'll show you the hairline cracks, the lazy lies, the way a calendar can tell on a person who thinks they're clever. I will tell you how an old woman learned to investigate with an apron on. How I waited, how I kept my hands steady, how I chose public truth over private poison, and at the end, I'll tell you what peace feels like after. People like tidy endings. I don't have one. I have something better, a clean beginning. I run a little breakfast place now. Women come to sit and talk and eat warm food. We help each other. We tell the truth. We pass around strength like it's a basket of rolls. If you stay with me, I promise I'll give you the details you came for. Who knew, when I knew, what I did, and what happened after. But first, come sit with me at a different table. A long time ago, when cinnamon meant comfort and not warning, when I was just a girl with flour on her hands, and a man with work-scarred fingers asked for a pie. On the 4th of July, I didn't just count down to fireworks. I counted down to my freedom, and I meant every second. I was born in a house my father built from other people's leftovers. It creaked in winter and hummed in summer. We were not rich. We were resourceful. My father, Earl, fixed what broke. My mother, June, stretched money like dough and made something good out of it. I had a younger sister, Lila, who could walk into a room and turn every head without trying. I didn't have that. I had hands that knew work and a face people trusted. By 12, I could turn a sack of flour and a pound of butter into pies folks would wait in line for. My grandmother taught me the patience of dough, how not to rush the rest, how to trust the oven, how to listen for the quiet knock inside the crust that says, "Now," she said, "Ruth, anything worth eating takes time." Anything worth keeping takes courage. My first stand sat at the edge of the Saturday market, a green booth with a crooked tin roof that rattled when the wind picked up off the river. I painted the sign myself, Henderson Pies. No fancy letters, just my name and what I promised. People here care about that, names and promises. Lila helped sometimes. She had a soft way with children and a laugh people would pay to hear. The boys in town followed her like stray dogs. My mother called her sunshine. I didn't mind being steady weather. Sunshine has its place. So does a sky you can trust. I learned our town's rhythm from that booth. The secretary who bought a peach pie every payday. The foreman who pretended he didn't like sweets and always left with two. The church ladies who told me who was sick and who had a baby and who needed prayer. Maple Harbor doesn't keep secrets well. That's what I used to think. Later I learned we don't keep truth well. We keep peace. There's a difference. The first time I saw Daniel, he was carrying something heavy. He always was. He had those broad shoulders and the softest way of setting a thing down, like respect extended to the world. He didn't flirt. He didn't brag. He asked for one apple pie and called me Miss Ruth like I was already someone he'd decided to honor. "Do you make these yourself?" he asked. "Everyone," I said. "Then I want you to know," he said, "this is the best thing that's happened to me all week." I had a lot of customers. That day, I had a believer. Maple Harbor was a place where you could count years by fairs and parades. We had a harvest festival in the fall with music in the square and strings of lights running from storefront to storefront. We had the 4th of July with a stage so the mayor could say words we already knew. We liked tradition. We liked knowing the order of things. I loved it too. Later, I would stand on that stage and change the order. Back then, I mistook quiet for safety. I didn't know quiet can hide storm clouds if you stop listening. Daniel and I didn't so much fall in love as lean into it, like stepping into a strong wind together. He'd come early on weekdays when the air was still cool, buy a pie and carry my extra crates to the truck. He never made me feel small. He made me feel seen. He'd talk about work at the county yard, about gravel and budgets and men who got louder when they were wrong. I'd talk about recipes and the old oven that ran hot on the left side, and the first time I sold out by noon. My father liked him because Daniel asked for advice and listened. My mother liked him because he cut wood like he meant it. Even Lila liked him. She said he was solid, which was her highest praise for quiet men. We courted where we could, over coffee in my parents' kitchen, in the church parking lot after Sunday service, on long walks by the water where we planned entire lives out loud and thought saying it made it so. He proposed in the square after the summer concert, with his hat in his hands and his heart in his eyes. We married in late May, the honeysuckle blooming along the fence so sweet it almost hurt. Our vows were not fancy. We promised work and kindness and truth. We wore simple rings. The church ladies made chicken and green beans, and my grandmother baked the wedding cake. No one could stop smiling. The first years were a house you couldn't believe you owned. We rented a small place at first, then saved for a home with a deep porch and a kitchen big enough for all my bowls. We had Mark, then Joel, then Ben. It was diapers and bills and casseroles for neighbors and my pie orders growing until I supplied half the diners in town. Daniel kissed me goodbye every morning and hello every night. I baked my love into crust, and sent it out into the world. Lila was around often, always a friend to my boys, always sweet to me. She stayed single. She said she didn't need a ring to be happy, and I believed her. She started helping me in the afternoons, wiping counters, reading to the boys while I rolled dough. The house smelled like cinnamon and soap. I slept like someone safe. You want me to say I saw it coming? I didn't. I saw a man who came home for supper and a sister who made my babies giggle. I saw the picture everyone else saw. Pictures lie. They tell the angle you choose. Still, there were tiny things, little snags on the fabric you only notice when your finger finds them. Daniel started staying later some nights. Lila knew our schedule like I did. My boys sometimes said things like, "Dad's busy with extra errands," and when I asked where they heard that, they shrugged. I tucked it away like a single thread and kept moving. I believed promises more than patterns. Patterns tell the truth first. We became what small towns call reliable. We showed up. We paid our dues. We took casseroles when people died and sat on bleachers when kids needed cheering. Daniel worked his way up at the county yard. I grew Henderson pies from a booth to a whole kitchen that smelled like the kind of love you can eat with a fork. Sundays were church and roast chicken and naps. My boys grew into their faces. Mark was organized and quiet. Joel bookish and careful. Ben, the spark in every room. Daniel had a way with them I appreciated. Firm, steady, there. When the water heater broke, he fixed it. When Joel's heart broke, he took a drive with him and brought him back easy. We had seasons of less money and seasons of more. We didn't complain out loud. Lila kept visiting. She didn't just breeze in. She blended in. She learned how I liked the counters lined before a bake. She knew which son needed hands-on help and which son needed to be left alone. When Mama got sick for a time, Lila traveled with me to appointments and braided my hair on nights I was too tired to do it. People said, "Those Henderson girls, loyal as winter." Looking back, the clues weren't loud. They were neat. They were the kind of neat that comes from thinking about something too much. Lila knew when Daniel would be late as if she had my calendar, but better. Sometimes she came over already knowing he wouldn't make dinner. I told myself two things. One, she might have talked to him while he was at work. And two, it didn't matter, because nothing looked wrong. Daniel started wearing cologne he hadn't worn before. He said a client gave it to him as thanks. He bought nicer shirts. He said promotions make a man think about presentation. He was not wrong. He also stopped leaving receipts where I could see them. I noticed the absence of things. It's funny how a clean counter can be a kind of mess if it's too clean. The boys changed in ways I couldn't name. They watched me watch. When I asked questions, they gave answers that sounded borrowed. If you're a mother, you know the difference. Sometimes I heard them call Lila on the phone in the evening and use the soft voices they used with me. I thought, what a blessing to have an aunt they trust like this. Blessings can cover glass until you step on it. We were the family people held up like a picture in their minds of how things should go. I did too. You can hold up a picture so long you start to forget what it's hiding. Everyone knew our schedule. Some people knew it too well. The first true crack made a sound in my chest I can still hear. Daniel told me he had to go to the county building for a late meeting about a road contract. I made coffee for his thermos, kissed him goodbye, and sat at the kitchen table with my ledger. 30 minutes later, I thought about the papers I needed him to sign for the new mixer. I grabbed my keys and drove downtown, rain making lace on the windshield. The county building was dark. No cars, no light in the windows. I pulled into the alley like someone who forgot something and didn't want to make a fuss. The door was locked. My coffee went bitter in my mouth, though I hadn't even taken a sip yet. He came home at 11 with that loose, tired smile he wore after overtime. He hung up his jacket and told me the meeting ran long. I said, "Of course." The word tasted like a lie I hadn't agreed to tell. After that, I paid attention. I wrote down times. I wrote down reasons. I made columns: late, explained, unexplained. I made a new column I didn't name, gut. My gut had opinions. It was done being polite. The boys said things like, "Dad is handling extra stuff." And when I asked what that meant, they looked at each other first and then at me. That look between them felt like being gently removed from a room you own. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself everything was fine. I told myself what women tell ourselves when we are tired and don't want our whole lives to change. Then there were the small financial oddities. Money withdrawn in round amounts at odd times. Cash purchases that left no trail. Kid-sized pharmacy bags I didn't recognize. Daniel brushed it off as helping a coworker in a hard spot. I wanted to be a wife who believed the best. I also wanted the truth more than I wanted my picture to stay pretty. One afternoon, I found a key on Daniel's dresser that didn't fit our house, our truck, our shed, or my shop. I slid it down into my apron pocket like it burned. I told myself I'd ask. I didn't, not yet. That key felt like a door I wasn't ready to open with my own hand. When I get scared, I clean. I scrubbed my counters that day until they shone like water. Lila stopped by accident with a peach cobbler and said, "You working too hard, Ruthie?" Her sweet voice rubbed wrong on my ear. I hated that it did. I hate the part of this story where I stopped being soft toward my sister. But truth is a stubborn thing. It keeps putting itself in front of you until you see it. I want to tell you I confronted Daniel right then. I want to tell you I threw that key on the table and demanded answers. But I have an old habit of finishing what I start, and I wasn't going to start a fight I couldn't finish. I set the key on the shelf behind my spices and waited. I found the first big lie in a locked building, with all the lights off. You can do a lot of investigation in a clean kitchen. I put a notebook in the drawer with the dish towels and wrote everything down with the same careful hand I used for recipes. Date. Time. Where he said he'd be. What I could prove. I didn't snoop in a fever. I snooped the way I roll dough. Steady, even, calm. My neighbor Evelyn Tate came over one afternoon with a thrift store lamp that needed a new socket. She's the kind of woman who knows how to fix a thing and when to call a thing what it is. I didn't tell her everything. I told her enough. She made a face like a woman who had seen this movie before. "Don't bleed in front of sharks," she said. "Get what you need and be ready." Daniel's errands often ran along the same streets Lila used: market, pharmacy, school. I started running my own errands at those same times. Twice I saw his truck parked 2 blocks from Lila's street. I didn't go down it. I stood where I could see enough and not be seen at all, and I learned the patience of a hunter who doesn't want the deer. She wants proof the deer exists. The key on my spice shelf got heavier by the day. One Tuesday, With the house empty and the air standing still like it does before a storm, I pressed that key into my palm and drove to Lila's. I didn't walk up to her door. I stood across the street behind a maple tree and watched. I told myself if I saw nothing, I'd go home and make soup. Daniel's truck turned the corner like it belonged to that block. He parked, glanced up and down, and walked to Lila's door like his feet knew the way. He didn't knock. He let himself in. I hadn't cried yet. Not through the dark building, not through the odd money, not through the notebook in the dish towel drawer. I cried then, not loud, not messy, but the kind of tears that come when your bones finally understand what your brain has been trying not to say. Evelyn brought me ice water that night and sat in my kitchen while I didn't speak. "What are you going to do?" she asked finally. "Bake," I said. "And then build." I began moving parts of my life into my own name. Quiet, legal, clean. I opened a bank account I didn't tell anyone about. I rented a small storefront on the other side of town. I talked to a lawyer in the next county because Maple Harbor recycles gossip faster than glass. I started thinking about Independence Day. Maple Harbor loves a stage. If I was going to tell my truth, I wanted the microphone and the lights and a crowd. I also wanted certainty. Proof that didn't shake in anyone's hand. That meant DNA. I saved a strand of Daniel's hair from his brush. I kept a cup Lila had drunk from, and the paper straws her kids left behind in my sink when they came by. I told myself I would never use those children as weapons. I told myself I wanted facts, not blood. I mailed what I had to a lab the lawyer recommended. I prayed over the envelope like it was a ship I was sending out to see if there was still land on the other side. If he had a key? What doors had I left open? I was about to shut them one by one. I chose to see what I already knew on a night when the sky was noisy, when my breath could hide behind the boom of fireworks. The square filled up like a jar of buttons, bright, mismatched, familiar. The stage was set with bunting. The mayor cleared his throat into the microphone and said the words he says every year about freedom and sacrifice and our good town. Daniel was in his best jacket, moving like a man who belongs in every circle. He helped a band unload, shook hands with a councilman, waved to me with that long-distance wave that says, "See? I'm where I said I'd be." I waved back and waited. At 11, he leaned to the chairman and pointed toward the side street. He left the square like he was headed to fetch something. I followed at a distance, my steps small and steady. People were everywhere, laughter pressed into the alleys, sparklers throwing quick stars. He walked the long way around, away from the noise, down past the post office and the bakery, until the streets got quieter and the houses got close together. Lila's porch light was off. The inside wasn't. He didn't knock. He never knocked. He went inside. I didn't count minutes. I watched a shadow move across a wall and then another. The fireworks started. Blue and red flashed on the glass. I could smell the sulfur and sugar from the cotton candy stand blocks away. Somewhere a baby cried. Somewhere a couple kissed. Somewhere a woman like me took a breath that hurt. When the finale had already crackled and fizzed and the square had begun to empty, Daniel came out with Lila behind him. They stood in the doorframe a second like people who didn't know where to put their hands, and then they knew, and they kissed. Not quick, not clumsy, not drunk, familiar. I walked home on strong legs. He came in later with the same loose smile. He said the cleanup took longer than expected. I asked if he wanted tea. I tucked him in like a nurse with a job. I lay next to him and stared at the ceiling where a crack runs from the vent to the corner, thin as a hair and just as stubborn. I decided in that long, dark what kind of woman I would be, I would not slam. I would build. I would not scratch and claw in a kitchen. I would stand on a stage. I would not let what he did turn me into someone I didn't like. I would be the same woman who makes perfect crust, patient, precise, certain. Revenge tastes better when it's fully baked. Mine needed a few more minutes. The lab's envelope arrived 2 weeks later. My hands didn't shake. Neither did the numbers. I tucked the report into a blue folder and placed it under the cake pans. Evelyn watched me do it and nodded like a foreman signing off a beam. "You have your steel," she said. I did. I also needed a stage and a reason to stand on it. The 4th of July committee lives for volunteers. I told them I'd love to help with the program order and the baked goods table. People praised me for my town spirit, as if I hadn't been carrying this town on my back one pie at a time for years. I smiled and wrote names and times and learned exactly when the microphone would be free and who controlled it. Zach, the high school sound kid whose mother buys cinnamon rolls from me every Saturday. I began moving my money, not like a thief, like a woman separating laundry. This pile mine, that pile his, this one mixed and needing sorting. I found a small 2-room rental on the north side with morning light and a decent stove. I told the landlord, a widow named Mrs. Carver, that I'd take it for 6 months. I didn't say why. Widows know why without you saying. I copied the divorce petition with my lawyer in the next county. I learned words like marital property and waste and settlement. The law has a way of sounding dry when the thing it's trying to hold is wet with real tears. Still, it holds. That's what I needed. I gathered evidence the way I gather ingredients. Not more than I need, but no less. Photos of trucks where trucks shouldn't be. Records of money moving without asking. The key. The hair and straw and report. Not to humiliate. To prove. Humiliation wasn't my goal. Freedom was. I told my boys I loved them without asking them to pick a side. I didn't tell them what was coming. I wanted their shock honest. I wanted them as witnesses, not co-conspirators. I made them dinner and hugged them too long and asked about work and girlfriends and new tires and the aching in their knees when rain comes. Evelyn asked me one more time, "Are you sure you want to do it like this? Public?" "Yes," I said. "Private truth almost killed me. I need a public one big enough to live in." I slept well the night before the 4th. I woke before my alarm, put on the navy dress with the small white flowers, pinned my hair up like I do for funerals and weddings, and put the blue folder in my bag. I added one more thing, a handful of keys, house, shed, shop, truck copies, everything that tied me to the life I was walking away from. Heavy enough to feel like something, light enough to throw. I kissed the kitchen door jamb on my way out like a superstition and whispered, "Thank you for shelter." The house didn't answer. Houses don't. They just stand or fall. People do the rest. Justice needs a stage, and mine had a countdown. I stood beside the stage while the mayor spoke. The bunting looked tired. The flag looked faithful. Children sat on their fathers' shoulders and waved paper fans. My bag felt heavier than it was. Zach the sound kid saw me, smiled, and leaned down from the booth. "Miss Ruth, you want to say something about the bake sale?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "And a little more." He handed me the mic like it was a cookie. The crowd clapped for something the mayor said about sacrifice. I stepped up. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't need to. I'd been clearing it for half a lifetime. "Good evening," I said. "I'm Ruth Henderson. I've fed most of you. You know my pies better than you know my voice. Tonight I'll use my voice." The square got quiet. Even the gnats seemed to hang still. "I've been married to Daniel Henderson for 52 years. We raised Mark, Joel, and Ben together. We've stood where you stand on nights just like this and felt grateful for this town. Some of you know me well. Some of you only know my crust." A few people laughed the kind of laugh that tries to keep things normal. "Tonight I'm going to tell the truth so I can breathe." I held up the blue folder. "For more than 15 years, my husband has kept a second life with my sister, Lila. I have photos, bank records, and DNA results that show he fathered her children. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to stop being hurt." The sound a crowd makes when it learns a secret together is a long inhale. Then the shuffle. Then the whispers. Then the clap of a single person who can't help herself. Evelyn. God bless her. I continued. "I've filed for divorce. Paperwork's done." I held up the petition. "I wish them health. I wish myself peace. Starting tomorrow, I won't be in the house on Willow Street. I'll be at Second Sunrise. That's the name of my new breakfast place on North. If you want coffee and truth, you'll find both there. If you want to gossip, go somewhere else." I looked at Daniel. He stood near the band shell, pale under a summer tan. I didn't talk to him like a wife. I talked to him like a person who had something of mine. "Daniel, I kept my vows even when you didn't. I'm done keeping your secrets." They were heavy. "You can carry what's yours now." I reached into my bag and pulled out the keys. House, shop, shed, spares. I held them high so they caught the string lights and then threw them into the air. They scattered with a sound like rain on a tin roof. People ducked, laughed in surprise, then went still again because this wasn't funny. It was finish. "As for my boys," I said, looking at the 3 faces I loved like the moon, "I love you enough to tell the truth in front of you. I wish someone had loved me like that sooner." I handed the microphone back to Zach, who took it with both hands like a delicate thing. I didn't wait to see who came toward me. Evelyn and 2 women from church flanked me like oak trees. We walked off the stage and through the square, people parting, some reaching for my arm, some standing back like they were in church, and something holy had happened. Liberation is loud, and then it's quiet. The quiet was waiting at my new door. The next morning, the town woke up and picked a side. The bakery where I bought sugar sold out of coffee by 10 from people standing around saying my name. The men at the hardware store talked less and hammered more. The church ladies did what church ladies do. They cooked, they prayed, and they chose paragraphs from Proverbs that fit the moment. Daniel slept at his brother's. So said the grapevine I didn't have to water. He came by our house, my old house, around noon to find his key didn't fit. Evelyn watched from her porch with a book she wasn't reading. He knocked. I wasn't home. I was at Second Sunrise, setting chairs down into neat squares of sunlight. Around 2, the bell on my new door chimed. It was Mark. His eyes were red-rimmed like someone who finally slept and didn't like the dreams. "Mom," he said. "I'm sorry." He didn't make excuses. He stood in front of what he had done, what he hadn't done, and took the rein. I put my hands on both sides of his face and kissed his forehead like when he was 6. "You're a good man," I said, "who made a bad choice. From now on, we tell each other everything. Deal?" He nodded and cried against my shoulder, hot and ashamed. I let the shame run off my apron and down into the floor. Joel arrived at dinner, driving in from 2 towns over where he keeps books for people who hate numbers. "I thought keeping peace was the same as keeping you safe," he said. I was wrong. It takes a lot for a quiet man to say he was wrong. I fed him eggs and toast and the truth. "Don't ever lie to protect me again," I said. "Tell me early. I can handle it." He reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. I know that now. Ben waited 2 days and came stomping in like a storm. "It wasn't fair," he started, falling into defense like a habit. Dad said I put up my hand. "Stop, your father made his choices. You made yours. I love you. I'm mad at you. Both things can sit in the same room. If you want to be in my life, the rent is honesty." He hung his head, kicked the baseboard like a teenager, and then he nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Lila left town the night of the 4th. That was smart. Pain that big needs fresh air and distance. I didn't wish her harm. I wished her a mirror. The women came. Oh, they came. Customers I'd fed for years came and bought coffee and looked at me with a new kind of respect, the kind we save for women who do not back down. Some brought stories. "My husband," one started, and I said, "Sit." Another whispered, "Is there a good lawyer in the next county?" I wrote down a name. Second Sunrise turned into a place for breakfast and backbone. The men came too, but different. Quiet, heads down, buying biscuits and tipping more than they should. One set his money on the counter and said, not looking up, "You did what you had to do, Miss Ruth," and left like someone who hoped saying it out loud would count for something. Daniel showed up a week later, thinner, older. He took his hat off like we were at a funeral. Maybe we were. "I'm sorry," he said. He tried to tell me how it started, as if the starting mattered now. "We were wrong," he finished. "I want to fix what I can." "You can sign papers," I said. "You can be decent with the boys. You can pay what the court says you owe. You cannot fix this for me. I already did." He looked around at the breakfast place. Women laughing at table 3, a baby gumming a spoon, sunlight making a square on the floor, and he knew he didn't live here. I slept in my new bed and woke up without checking a driveway for a truck that wasn't there. Peace felt odd at first, like a shirt that didn't know my shoulders yet. Then it felt like skin. Peace felt strange at first, like a new house at night. Then it learned my name. I named my place Second Sunrise because that's how it felt. Same sky, new light. We open at 6. By 6:10, the room is a low hum of coffee spoons and relief. I hired 3 women who needed work and a win. Marcia, who left a man who never left the couch. Tina, who can cook perfect bacon while finishing a GED. Anita, who learned to laugh again right at my sink. We serve pancakes with browned edges, eggs soft or hard as you want them, biscuits that don't apologize, and coffee that doesn't pretend to be anything but strong. But what we really serve is space, for telling the truth without being told to hush. I keep a jar on the counter labeled rent money. It's not charity. It's an agreement. If you take some, you come back later when you're able and put in double. Watching that jar fill and empty is like watching a tide that cares. We started a Tuesday night circle for women who need a place to say, "This is what happened to me," and here, "Me too," and then, "Here's a plan." Evelyn leads the part about locks and lights and bank accounts. I lead the part about breath and biscuits. That's my lane. Feed a person until the shaking slows. I learned the mechanics of money. I look at every bill. I don't sign anything I didn't read. I teach other women how not to sign anything they didn't read too. It feels like handing out umbrellas before a storm you know is coming. Sometimes men come in angry because the sight of women who don't scare easy looks like disrespect to them. We pour them coffee and talk to them like grown-ups. Most settle down. A few don't. That's what the bell on the door is for when it swings shut behind them. I don't spend much time thinking about whether people like me now. I sleep. That's my review score. On Sundays, my boys sit at a back table and talk like men who have learned the difference between covering and caring. They ask about the Tuesday circle. They carry bags to Marcia's car. They fix Anita's taillight. They don't make speeches. They do chores. A man learning to do quiet good is a beautiful thing. I traded secrets for sunlight. It looks good on my face. A letter came with a Pennsylvania postmark and my sister's careful script. Lila said she was working in a sewing room, saving, keeping the kids steady. She wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness. I hope for a chance to say the words out loud." She came back months later, older around the eyes. We met at second sunrise after the morning rush. She stood just inside the door like someone who wasn't sure she was allowed in. I waved her to my table and set down 2 mugs. "I am sorry," she said, the words small and true. I was selfish. I was weak. I hurt you. She didn't reach for my hand. She didn't list reasons. She let the weight sit where it should. "I believe you're sorry," I said. "I also believe in boundaries. We can be civil. We won't be close. I won't let you borrow me again." Her mouth trembled and then steadied. "That's fair," she said. We talked about our mother's health and the kids and nothing that would bleed. When she left, she looked relieved, like someone who had been waiting to be told the rules and finally knew how to live inside them. As for Daniel, he moved to a small place by the river. He comes into town, nods to me if we pass, keeps his agreements because the court says so and because shame can make a man practical. Sometimes I feel a soft sadness for the life we almost had, and then I feel gratitude for the life I actually do. I am not a woman without scars. I am a woman who does not wear them like chains. I have laughs that come easy again. I have a porch that smells like rain and coffee. I have a breakfast rush at 6 and quiet at 2. I have peace I earned the hard way. If you are watching this and something in your chest is answering back, if you are living small to keep a picture pretty, hear me. You are not fragile. You are careful. Those are different things. You can be careful and brave at the same time. Tell me in the comments what dignity means to you today. Tell me where you're listening from. Subscribe if calm. Careful storytelling helps you feel less alone. And if you're in Maple Harbor, stop by Second Sunrise. We'll save you a seat and pour you a cup that doesn't pretend to be anything it isn't. The night I threw those keys, people told me I was wild. I wasn't. I was finished. Finished with lies. Finished with silence. Finished with being the only person in the room who didn't know my own life. Freedom didn't arrive like fireworks. It arrived like sunrise, slow, certain, lighting up everything I already owned.